Hello, and welcome to Field Lab Earth, the podcast that's all about past and present advances in the fields of agronomic, crop, soil, and environmental sciences. Today, we're taking a break from our regularly scheduled programming to bring you a guest episode from our sister podcast, Decode 6. First, we'll have a brief interview with Decode 6's moderator, DJ May, and then we'll share a sample episode for you to enjoy. We hope you enjoy it and give them your support. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Today we have DJ with us. Hi DJ, how are you doing today?
Abby, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing super. So glad to have you on today. So, before we get to the Decode 6 stuff, can you tell me just a little bit about who you are and what you do at the societies?
Yeah, of course. So I am a science writer and communicator, and in my spare time, I'm a big fan of mixed media art and pottery and long walks with my mini poodle Mutt. But here at the societies, I serve as the content and operations manager for our brand new education platform, which is called Decode 6.
Awesome. So we're going to share a sample episode shortly, but can you start by telling us what Decode 6 is at large?
Of course, yeah. So the big picture, Decode 6 is a free online education platform that we're stocking with bite-sized, accessible information about carbon and ecosystem service markets. And you might be like, well, why carbon markets? But the thing is, people are looking for ways to offset their greenhouse gas emissions, and agriculture is really coming to the forefront as a solution for that. And carbon programs are approaching people in agriculture, finding ways to change their practices to get carbon out of the atmosphere and into soil and plants to help combat climate change. So that's the big picture, but you can imagine that it gets complicated really quickly. And when farmers or agricultural land managers are approached about participating in these programs, it can be really hard to figure out what's true, what's a sales pitch, what's unscientific. And so we heard all of this feedback from especially our certified professionals that they didn't know what to do or who to trust. And so we came up with this idea for Decode 6 as a means of getting really short, bite-sized, accessible, and scientific information to this audience to answer all of those questions. And what's really great about it is that we are in the perfect spot at the societies to act as that interface between scientists and people who are out in the field. We have people on the back end doing fantastic research, but that doesn't always make it out to practitioners or, certified crop advisors. And so we're here working with lots of really great partners to get that research out into the field so it can be put into practice. And I did just want to mention really quickly, we're really grateful because we've had some partnerships with amazing organizations like the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, Dairy Management, Inc., the Soil Health Institute, and the National Indian Carbon Coalition. So there's a lot of people who have great information that they want to get out into the field. And so we're acting as that hub to push it out so people can use it.
Awesome. And so the market part of a carbon market is when the farmers get the carbon into their soil, there's some kind of compensation for that? Is that how this works, or what?
Yeah. So there's a few different ways they're structured. Some are based on giving payments just for adopting new practices. So they'll give a farmer payments up front, maybe to try out cover crops or use no-till. And the farmer might pledge to do that for quite a while. There's a concern, that you keep carbon in the soil, and if you stop tilling and then go back to tilling, you could release a lot. So there's sort of time periods put on that, and it's usually 7 to 10 years. Another way they could do it is they could get a baseline of how much carbon is in their soil and then come back later and test it and say, oh, you sequestered this much. That's, X metric tons of carbon. We'll give you, so many dollars for those tons. So there's a couple ways it works. But yeah. Essentially, it's like farmers changing their practices to get carbon into the soil.
Awesome. She's an expert, everybody. Already threw a curveball, handled it with panache. So, next curveball, Decode 6, the name. Tell me about it. What's going on?
Yeah, it is kind of a funky name. So the naming process was I had a lot of fun with it. We got a crew together. We were looking at all of these very clunky technical names, and in fact, our working name was CSEP. It was the Carbon and Ecosystem Services Education Program, which is just not that fun to say. So we were like, we need to get something shorter, more to the point. And as we started looking, carbon and climate URLs, domain names, very expensive. So we were like, oh man, we gotta branch out. And we came up with Decode for our mission of decoding all of these mystical things going on in the carbon and ecosystem services sphere. And then 6 is our little nod to carbon's atomic number on the periodic table. Plus we have 6 different major topic areas we cover on the site.
And what are these 6 categories?
Yeah, so carbon is 1. Water is the 2nd. Markets and economics, which is a big one when you talk about carbon markets. Nutrients, habitat and biodiversity, and climate. So we're going to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, totally. So then if people want to check out the podcast, as hopefully they will, Podcast Buddies for Life, where can they find it and what can they expect when they listen?
Yeah, well, hopefully you can just search Decode 6 on your favorite podcast streaming platform and we should pop up. That includes Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and pretty much any other streaming platform I could find. So we should be there. And if this is something you're interested in, I highly recommend you check out our website with our videos and articles as well. So that's decode6.org.
Sure. And that's the number 6 in both instances, not spelled out, right?
Not spelled out, yeah. So the word decode and then the numeral 6. Yep.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today and all of your hard work on this project. It's been really fun to see it come to life from the sidelines. So let's get into the sample episode.
Welcome to the Decode 6 podcast, where we take your questions about carbon and ecosystem services and match them to the experts with the answers. I'm your host, DJ May. And today we're talking about carbon programs. Before you get anywhere near signing a contract for a carbon program, there are some things you should think about. Instead, what are the 3 questions you should ask yourself before you even look into specific carbon programs? Joining me today to answer that question is Dr. Chad Hart, a professor of economics at Iowa State University. Chad's research has examined the interaction between agricultural commitments within the World Trade Organization. He's also studied policies and programs of World Trade Organization members, crop insurance, international trade, federal agricultural policy, and crop marketing. Lately, Chad's been spending a lot of time thinking about carbon markets and programs in Iowa. So Chad, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Excellent. Well, we'll jump right in. So what questions should you ask yourself before you even look into a carbon or ecosystem service market?
Well, I figure the first one, and probably the biggest one, is had you been already thinking down along these lines? When we're talking about, the farmer's decision here in joining a carbon market, a lot of it has to do with, I'm going to say this is like taking on a side gig to your main job. The idea is the carbon markets are offering some additional revenue, but not as much as the traditional crops that they're going to grow. And so we need to look at how does this fit within the farm plan? And so that's why I say, have farmers already thought about this? Were they already thinking about cover crops or reduced tillage? The practices that many of our carbon, contributors are looking for right now from farmers. So I think that's the biggest deal here. If you're already thinking about some of the conservation practices you might adopt, then carbon markets possibly make sense for you as we're looking over the next year or two.
Perfect. Well, when you start thinking about making these changes, how far along do I need to be? Have I just heard about cover crops, or when should I start thinking about maybe jumping into a program?
Well, I think it's more than just I've heard about it. It's more that you've done some research on it. You're thinking about, you've got a 40 off to the side that you can do an experiment on, that you're looking at possibly testing something as we're looking here. So it's beyond just thinking about it, and it's more that you've made some moves to sort of begin to do that process, or at least try to do that process. Because I think in this case, this is not a decision where I want folks just to, hey, I heard about this and I dove right in. It's like, no, you do need to take a little bit more time and effort in it, because it is more of a longer term decision, because you're signing into a contract which is legally binding. And so we want to make sure that we're understanding all the ramifications of that move. So it is beyond just knowing about it, and more, have you done some homework on the practices that you're willing to adopt?
Perfect. Well, let's talk. I'm going to play devil's advocate. What if I just jumped right in, didn't think about it, and signed one of these contracts?
Well,
What could go
I mean,
wrong?
I think it can work out, but it's one of these deals of then you face the challenges of, okay, let's say that practice really doesn't fit or work on your farm. What are you into then? And that, like I say, this goes back to the contract. What is in there that, allows you to make maybe modifications to the practices you would look at? Or if worse comes to worse, how do you get out of that contract? And each contract's going to be different. We're still sort of in what I call the wild west of carbon markets. And what I mean by that is we don't really have one giant carbon market. What we've got are a bunch of individual transactions that are being made. And so every farmer's decision, every farmer's contract is going to be a little different than their neighbors right now. It depends on who you've signed up with, what you've signed up for, how long have you signed up for, and all those factors are going to influence how well that contract works for you, or if it doesn't work out for you, how difficult or painful might it be to get out of that contract?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about length of time. So, how long are most of these, and what does that mean for what you're doing on your farm?
Oh, well, like I say, in this case, you got to shop around. What we find is that some of these are only, annual contracts, meaning they last a year and then you can get out. Most of them, though, are in the 5 to 10 year range, because when we're thinking about these carbon practices, this is not something you can just do in 1 year and magically you've saved all this carbon. For the most part, we're talking about practices that over the long run are capturing carbon from the air and putting it back into the soil. So it takes time and effort for that to occur. So most of these opportunities, like I say, are in that 5 to 10 year range. So this is not something that you can just magically turn on and off. No, you're signing up for a long-term commitment on the farm.
All right. Yeah. Scary for folks with commitment issues.
Well, it can also be difficult when we think about a lot of our farmers in the Midwest who rent land. And so oftentimes you're renting that on an annual basis. And that's what makes this sort of connection with carbon markets kind of tenuous, because you need to line up your rental arrangement with your carbon market potential out there as well. I can't sign up for a 10-year carbon contract on something that I may not, on land I may not have 2 years from now. And so that's another um, issue, if you will, that farmers and landlords need to get together on this and go, okay, if the tenant's going to sign up for this carbon opportunity, the landlord needs to be involved and on board as well, so that they can guarantee they can carry out the terms of that contract.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but is there any setup there where these programs make sure that you have your landlord on board, or could you get burned by that?
No, it's possible to get burned. It's possible that you could get into some of these and not have the landlord. But I think that's something that many of the carbon traders are learning as well, figuring out, okay, who really needs to be at the table when we're signing this contract, or, setting it up with the farmer. Okay, because many farmers own some land and then rent additional land. So, okay, sitting down with the farmer, what fields are you going to apply this practice on? Is it your own land? Is it your rented land? If it's your rented land, we'd like to talk to the landlord. If it's your own land, nope, just talking to you does the job. And so I think, like I say, since we're in the Wild West again, we're still learning how to build these contracts to where they work for both sides, for the farmers and implementing the practices, and for the traders and making sure that they can move those carbon markets up the chain to market to other consumers.
Yeah. And it sounds like you need to loop in a lot of different people to make this work.
I believe you do, because when you're looking at, like I say, we're making changes to the practices on the farm. And those changes have agronomic impacts, they have financial impacts. And so I look at this as a farmer needs to fall back on his team of experts that he or she is utilizing to help them optimize the farm. So it's talking with your agronomist, your seed salesman, your crop insurance agent, your ag lender, your family, your landlords, or your tenants, and working with all of those folks to make sure that this is the best opportunity in trying to leverage the carbon opportunities within the farm. And so this is not, like I say, not something that just one person should make up their mind and go, yep, we're going to do this. It's like, no, spend some time, do some homework, talk to your valued team members out there to figure out if this is the best move that the farm can make.
Great. I love that. Do you have any final thoughts about anything you should ask yourself before you look into these programs or markets?
Well, like I say, I think it's good to ask questions. I mean, this, like I say, we're at the very beginnings of these markets. So it's a real exciting time, but it's also a time that, yeah, it does raise some concern. So it's one of these deals of I want people to investigate what are the potential opportunities they have there. Like I say, it may make sense to, if you've got that piece of land that, is sort of off by itself. Well, here's a time where you can run a little bit of experiment. You can dabble in the carbon markets without inducting your full entire farming operation into it, sort of build into it, much like we do when we're trying other changes in practices. Like, for example, when you're trying a new seed variety, or you're trying some new, fertilizer or something like that, you may only do it on a small piece of your farming operation to see how well it works. I'm going to argue carbon markets should be approached the same way. Let's try it on a little bit here, and if it works really well, then start to expand it over the rest of the farm.
Yeah. What a great learning opportunity. You can troubleshoot, figure out what goes well.
It is. And I think that's the deal here when we're looking here. We're trying to create a new market where one really hasn't existed before. In economics, we talk about things called externalities, which are basically things that happen because a market transaction has occurred. But these things weren't expected or necessarily part of the market transaction. And I think carbon has been one of those deals. When we're looking here, we've always raised crops. We create crop markets. We're used to pricing that. Carbon is something that sort of has been unpriced all this time throughout agriculture. And now we're trying to put a price on that as well. And so it is a new opportunity.
Excellent. Well, just to summarize, the 3 questions you should ask yourself before you look into one of these markets: were you already thinking about making these changes? How committed are you? And did you talk with your decision-making team?
Yep.
But thank you so much, Chad. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, DJ. Glad to be of service.
If you want to learn more about carbon programs, check out the show notes. And if you're curious about carbon and ecosystem services and how all of this is fitting together with these markets popping up, come visit us at decode6.org to learn more.
Thank you for listening to Field Lab Earth. You'll find links to today's resources in our show notes or on our website. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for show topics, please contact us at podcast@sciencesocieties.org or on Twitter @FieldLabEarth. If you'd like to hear more content like this, please subscribe, and don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Stitcher, or anywhere else you find your podcasts if you like our show. This podcast is a joint production of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, and Soil Science Society of America. Special thanks to Lobo Loco for the use of their song Spook Castle on the intro and outro of our show. Opinions and conclusions expressed by guests are their own and are not considered as those of the American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, Soil Science Society of America, its staff, its members, or its advertisers.